Good evening, and welcome to another edition of Concentric Educational Solutions Podcast, one door at a time. I'm your host, David Heiber, CEO and founder of Concentric. I know I say this every single time, but when we started this podcast, and now we're in the season 2, it was how do we bring community, businesses, education, and politics together? Like, what is that intersection? And we had some esteemed guests in the education field. And then I had this audacious goal about how do we bring politicians, the one who are influencing the policies and the legislation and the laws that we have to follow, and given the direction of Baltimore City, bring them on and just talk about the work. And I never thought that I would have the opportunity to actually get to Mayor Scott. I thought it was a big, audacious goal. Probably wouldn't be able to get there. It was primary season, whatever the case may be, and just following everything that was going on. But I had the opportunity to watch Mayor Scott and observe him. And I remember when he became mayor, when you were 36, right? And just seeing the tremendous growth of someone who unapologetically loved Baltimore, and seeing that growth and seeing him around and trying to say, okay, you know, he might not even know who I am. Let me just try to reach out. And he was always gracious. And through prayer, through power, through the ability and humility of Mayor Scott, I am honored. And this is a very proud day for us to welcome Mayor Brandon Scott to the seat. Thank you so much, brother, Mr. Mayor, for showing up. I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much. Like, y'all don't understand. Like, we have what you're gonna hear now. Yes. Is a live studio audience, and we never had that. This is the very first time, and so I want to thank you so much. It's a conversation. You are a son of Baltimore. Mm-hmm. Tell us about your journey. Like, you grew up in Baltimore. What shaped you?
Wow, that's what shaped me. When people ask me why I got into public service, you have to think about, I'm a first generation Baltimore, right? Especially for black folks. Most black people in Baltimore you talk to say, "Oh, where's your family, son?" A lot of them are going to say they're from North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yes.
So my dad's family is from rural North Carolina. My mom's family is from rural Virginia.
Okay.
The port of Baltimore, quite frankly, is why I'm even alive. My dad followed my uncles and my older cousins here. They were not my dad, but my uncle was working down at Bethlehem still. My granddad worked at the General Motors plant, which is actually how him and my grandmother bought the house that my aunt still lives in today.
Oh, wow.
On a 2500 block of Loyal Northway, and that's where my mom and dad met. I grew up in Park Heights. I was born in 1984 and lived at 2551 West Coast Spring Lane, literally until I moved to Northeast Baltimore in 2009. But when you grew up in Baltimore in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, especially in Park Heights,
Absolutely.
It's a little different city than it is today. And that's what really shaped me. Having that strong family, that strong black family that told me that I should be proud of who I am, where I come from, who I come from, and understanding where I sit in the world, and understanding that where I sit in the world is not where I should be sitting in the world, not where my people should be sitting in the world. And it's my responsibility to take it a step further than my grandparents did, working and dying on that farm, or working at General Motors and Sears, right here in Baltimore for my mom's parent. It's my responsibility to take us further. And not just us as in my family, but our people that lived around us, that look like me, that struggle like we have in this city, but really in this country for a long time. But when you think about why public service, I always tell this story. I was 6 or 7 years old the first time I saw someone get shot in Park Heights, near my house, just outside playing basketball. If anybody in the audience know about the ranch, they know what that was back in the day. And remember, fortunately or unfortunately, but fortunately in my eyes, that having a keen memory about how no one gave a damn what happened. The next day I was just supposed to go to school like it was regular.
Because like you said, it was crazy in the 80s and early 90s.
This is like around that time, and then it got worse, of course, in 93. But imagine a young man that also knows, right? One of the things that the Creator blessed me with is a great memory, right? Also knew at that time that my neighborhood is the center of the world, sports world at minimum. On
Yeah.
the third Saturday in May,
Yeah.
for a horse race known as Preakness. And growing up in a neighborhood that the day before and every day after, you weren't even treated as human. All of that is what shaped me into the person that I grew to be. That's when I decided that I wanted to be the mayor of Baltimore, because I knew from my uncles and all of these folks that ran the family business, getting invited to political fundraisers and all of those things, that these were the folks that were supposed to be looking out for people like me, right? I knew that the conditions that my friends were living in, that I lived in, even though my family fared better than most living in Park Heights, right? Shouldn't happen. I knew that it wasn't okay that I went to schools where I couldn't drink out the water fountain. Those are the things that shaped me, and that upbringing here in Baltimore. My family and my community around me is what helped me grow into the man that I am.
Yeah. So, speak about that. So you went to Mervo.
I did.
Right. And we were just talking before we came on. I mean, your last principal was one of my mentors, Dr. Irby Miller. As you're going through Mervo and you're thinking about where you're going to go to for undergrad, like what are you thinking that at that point?
Well, this is a very interesting story. So it depends on what time I'm at Mervo. So
Okay.
everyone knows, essentially, I went to Mervo to run track, right? Mervo has one of the storied track programs in
what was your event?
Maryland. I ran distance, 4x8 mile, 2 miles.
I was a half mile and a mile.
Summertime steeplechase. I was insane.
Okay.
But if early on, I always knew I wanted to study political science. But I think that everything happens for a reason. I had something happen to me in my junior year that reshaped it. I got hurt, so I wasn't running for a period of time. Right?
Okay.
Actually, for the first time since I was like 6 years old that I wasn't running track. And we had conversations, and we made a decision because we knew that the purpose of me doing this for all these years is so that I could ultimately go to college. Right?
Absolutely.
And now I didn't have to because I was blessed that my track coach, Coach Hendricks, and my then college-bound advisor, Dr. Biley, forced me and my class into college-bound in 9th grade. So I didn't take the SAT after 10th grade. So I spent that time narrowing in on where I wanted to go. And quite frankly, St. Mary's wasn't even on my radar.
What were you thinking about?
I was thinking about Hampton.
Okay.
I was thinking about George Mason, Drexel, William and Mary.
Okay.
I thought about Eastern Shore, all of these different places, right? And Morgan, obviously.
Yeah.
Because it's right across the street from Mervo, essentially.
Yeah.
But one day I show up in class, and before class, and there's my dad's there, my track coach there, the college-bound, my teacher, and it's this young lady. And they say, well, we think this is a place that you should consider. It's a recruiter from St. Mary's. Never visited, went home, thought about it, made the decision to go there. And at that time, also made the decision that I wasn't going to run in college because at the time they didn't have a track team. And it's the...
So you went that without visiting?
I chose without visiting. I went, when I showed up on St. Mary's campus, August 31st of 2002, the first time I went there. Ever.
Oh, wow.
And made that decision based on solely the amount of money they were giving me. Right?
Yeah, real talk.
What I knew was the rigor for the school because I wanted to be challenged, and that they had the Center for the Study of Democracy for Political Science. Because I knew then that's what I wanted to do.
So you were clear.
I was very clear. I know it's a unicorn. I knew what I wanted to do. There was no guessing, and that's why I chose to go to that school, and the rest is history.
So you graduate. It's a hike because that's upper.
No, we say the Smart St. Mary's, not Mount St. Mary's, the one in southern Maryland.
Okay.
So it's about, back then it was an hour and 45 minutes. Now traffic is different. It's like 2 hours and 15 minutes.
So you come back, right? What's your first entree? Like,
so I come back. When I first come back, this is a great story too. When I first come back, I think I applied for like 100 jobs.
Okay.
Right. And at that time, I was blessed. So my family runs an air conditioning business, so I wasn't gonna not have a job. So I'm working there, and like I'm literally like keeping a shirt and tie in my truck and going like doing job interviews during the daytime because I wanted to work in government. True story. I applied for the Baltimore City teaching residency.
Oh, really? Okay.
I didn't get an interview. They didn't even interview me. I applied to work at Operation Safe Kids, working with the health department, working with at-risk young people. They didn't hire me. They actually hired a person that I mentored for the SAT, which was funny. I applied for all these government jobs. Didn't get it. But I got a job working at Big Brothers Big Sisters, running mentoring programs in schools in Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Howard County, and Mervo. Mervo actually ended up being one of them.
Okay.
And I got that job because I went on my interview, and my former supervisor was like, "Oh, you're the St. Mary's?" I'm like, yeah. The person they're trying to place me at the St. Mary's, you hired, just like that.
Wow.
And that's how it happened. Then we had a lightning rod happen in Maryland politics. The next year, obviously, that was 2006, that election, the then mayor became the governor. The council president became the mayor. And I was still living in Northwest Baltimore at the time. My council person became the council president, then council president Rawlins Blake.
Yes.
Folks in the neighborhood, this is the part of the story people don't know, say like, you should be the person that should replace her in the council. You should apply for this vacancy, which I did. Obviously didn't get it. It was actually, we're very close now today, having working with each other since 2007, but they gave it to Council Vice President Sharon Green Middleton.
Okay.
But after that hearing, 3 people on the city council out of the 15 actually took time to talk to a then young 22-year-old Brandon Scott. Mary Pat Clark, Councilman Young at the time, Mayor Young, and the council president, and then later Mayor Rawlins Blake. She took it a step further. They offered me like an internship, so I worked for free. And then I got a job as a staffer in 2007, worked for her when she was mayor. And at 23 years old, she placed a lot of responsibility and spent a lot of time personally immense, but a lot of responsibility that now in hindsight, I knew she knew what she was doing, right? And I remember the first time I heard somebody other than me in politics say that I was going to be the mayor was her. It was actually my last day working for her in 2010. And we were in the truck together, and Mayor Nutter from Philadelphia was there. And she said, I want to tell you, Brandon's leaving me. He's going to run for office on his own, but he's going to be the mayor of the city one day. Because she was preparing me all those years for what I have to do, what I do on a daily basis now.
So as you're going through that experience, right, those salient points, and a lot of times when we're young, those lessons from our mentors, we don't even know we're being mentored, right? Like I remember had an opportunity to meet Rawlins Blake, my mentor, Freeman Rabowski. It was right. Like, so Freeman is right. I mean, other than being an alpha, that's my man. But he poured into me unconditionally, and I didn't even know I was being mentored. When you ran and you won your first time, was it what you expected, or were there things that you just didn't think about?
So I guess it's different for me.
Okay.
So this is the truth. My job got easier when I got elected at the first time as a city council person, right? Because when you're working in the mayor's office, essentially my first election was my easiest election ever, right? Basically, it was like 6 or 7 people in the race, and I won with like 67% of the vote.
Okay.
Because the folks in Northeast Baltimore were accustomed to coming to me as the mayor's representative to get all of those things done. Right?
Makes sense.
That was a lot easier. And I had those, and was the difference too. We know a lot more so now, but back then, very few people who were elected in elected office also like had degrees in political science, right?
Yeah.
I had spent those, it was easier. No one mentioned my age until I ran for mayor.
Okay.
Because imagine me coming into the city council at 27, right, and working with council people, but I was the person that wrote their bills as a staffer, right? So they know I know what I'm doing because I was helping them along the way and helping them with issues when I was in the mayor's office. This is why we had that great relationship. That was the easy part. The difference, though, and I think this is what I say to people all the time, is that it's different when your name's on the paper. And it's also different when it all falls on you, right? And the levels of that grow as I grew in elected office, right? Back then, it was just one district. When I came council president, it was the whole city. But as mayor, it's the whole city in a different way, right? Unfortunately, when you're in, this is my 17th year in City Hall. It's
a long time for being
23 and now I'm 40,
Belated happy birthday.
Thank you. When you go through some of the things that I've had to, like, just imagine the things that we've experienced in the city during my time in office, right? Like tornadoes, derechos, blizzards, fires where we lose kids, the unrest and the death of Freddie Gray, and then just in my time as mayor, we had COVID, houses and blocks of houses explode. We lost firefighters in a big collapse. We have the Key Bridge. You have all of these things happen. People don't understand how heavy that is. It's heavy to be the person that has to tell someone that their loved one's never coming home. It's heavy when, even for me, there are instances where the people that died are close to me, right? Like Dante Barksdale is a perfect example, right? Where in that moment, I don't get to be human. I don't get to mourn the loss of my brother, my mentor, my friend who helped me in the work, right? Who walked the streets of East Baltimore with me when other people wouldn't do it, right? I have to then be strong for his family and then also uplifting the entire city. And I think the best example of that happened a few years ago, and it actually provided the opportunity for me to take a beat and recalibrate myself. We were downtown, not too far from here. It was the first football game for Mervo. Mervo was due to play City. We all knew we were going to blow City out.
Okay.
It's okay. And my little cousin, who's my godson, he's graduating this year. This was previous year, his junior. It was the first game on varsity. We have a press conference for the Maryland Cycling Classic that's coming that following weekend. And after it's over, I get held up by some members of the media just asking me all kind of ridiculous stuff. So I'm a little late. I normally get to the game before they start. And on our way there, we get a command page that there's a shooting at 3500 Hill and Row. I obviously know that address like it's my own. So I'm immediately then in a panic because my first thought is like, oh my God, I have to make sure he's okay. So I'm calling him. I can't get him. One of my best friends who went to school with me teaches there. She's there. Her daughter goes there. She's like, TJ's fine. I can see him. And I'm like, who is it? And they didn't know. They called me back and she told me who it was. She said it was Jeremiah. And like, I immediately sunk down in my truck chair because I knew we had worked so hard. Everybody in the school community had worked so hard to get him back here and get him on the right track. So when I get to the school, I'm not able to be in that moment. I'm like gathering kids.
You gotta be mayor.
All of these things, I gotta be mayor. And when I talked to his mom, before I talked to the press, she tells me something that broke me. She said that Jeremiah told me he was gonna look for you before the game to talk to you about getting a job that allowed him to also play football so he can help take care of his son. And then in that moment, I'm thinking, wow, I could have been there, but I was dealing with this. And it really put me in a really dark place. And I had to do the things we have to do, right? That sometimes we don't like to talk about as Black men, but therapy, a lot of it, because it really recalibrated me to like what really matters and why spending that time with those young people and investing in them really matters, because it literally can be life or death for them.
And like, you've seen a lot, obviously, not just growing up in Baltimore, being in politics in Baltimore, obviously being the mayor, right? You accomplished a lot in your first term. Hell, taking office during the pandemic, which everyone's trying to figure, the world's trying to figure it out.
Nobody knew. When I came into office on December the 8th, no one knew what the next 2 weeks were going to look like, let alone the next 4 years. And that's the reality. People were dying by the hundreds, and I had to make decisions that were unpopular.
And you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't.
Yeah. Well, I said on December the 8th of 2020, I tell people, run the tape. I'm going to do the right thing, not the popular one, even if it's a bad political thing for me. One of the first things I did was tell people to go home and come back when I come back outside when I tell you to. Because I knew people would be mad, but in order to be mad at me, they got to be alive. People were dying by the hundreds, especially our like parents and grandparents generation.
Yeah,
and they weren't outside. It was young people killing them because they refused to be responsible with how they were acting.
I want to, you said something very salient about, one, your mental health, recalibrating. Heavy is that crown that someone has to wear. I realized this, like when we went from like 20 employees to 200 and some, there's a lot of decisions that people don't even know you have to make, and taking that, you got to take that home. And so how do you deal, and I have to say this in complete transparency, like watching you navigate attacks, all types of stuff. is admirable. Everyone thinks they know what they would do until they have to do it, right? And you've had to model it, and you've had to do it, and you've had to do it publicly. Looking back first, and now looking forward, what do you? What is there anything that you have looked at in the previously and say, okay, I would have kind of tweaked it, and then looking forward, what do you see? Because we are 100 hours, something like that until primary, and people have to really make a choice. What do you see? Looking back, what may have you tweaked, and then going forward, what do you see?
Yeah, I think when I look back, though, what I tell people is that I'm very proud of what we accomplished, right? We led us through a pandemic. I said that we would reduce gun violence the right way, not zero tolerance and all that other craziness, and that we would set a goal that we would reduce it from 15% from one year to the next, and we beat it. We beat it at 20%, and we're at 33% as you and I are talking right now. And we did it the right way. We reopened rec centers. We opened 12 new schools since I was mayor.
Yes.
Our unemployment hit its lowest point ever in the city last year at 2.5%, 8th fastest growing economy in the world. And guess what? That's still not enough for me because I want perfection for Baltimore because I know the great potential. So every single thing that we do, we can do better. And I start with me. Everything that I do, I can be better at, right? And I'm an athlete at heart. And that's the way I look at things. Nobody is perfect. Michael Jordan missed shots, right? We know LeBron misses them, especially in the clutch. But
I'm missing the clutch G.
but we all can improve, and that's the way I look at it. But when you talk about outside of that, when you talk about the way that I deal with whether it's racist attacks, all of those things, I wouldn't do it any other way. I would do it exactly the way. I'm not going to tiptoe around it. I'm going to call it out for what it is. I'm going to let them know that I am proud of who I am and where I come from, and there is nothing that they can do to me that they haven't already done to my ancestors. I owe it to those people who died for me to even be able to think about sitting in my seat, to call them out and let them know and make them uncomfortable for what they do and say. And I think it's gotten brought back into the light with the stuff around the bridge, which is why I have this hoodie on today.
Absolutely.
But that's not the first time. It's literally been every single moment. It started really with the unrest.
Yes.
In 2015 for me, and that's when I gained a lot of let's say not so friendly followers on social media.
Absolutely.
And since then, it's just something that I've been accustomed to. I always say to my staff, if I go a couple of weeks and someone hasn't called me the N-word online, I feel like I haven't done my job. Because my job is to make sure that people know that we can not only do this work, do it better than them, and do it in a way that shows that we value our people and that we're purposely undoing all the things that were done in the past to hold our people back. So they should be angry at me because my job is to take their way of life that was the wrong way, that doesn't think that black people, brown people, women should be able to be as equal as them.
And what resonates with me is your commitment to be unapologetically deliberate in your approach. You know, a couple of last questions. One of the things that I admire that you've done is that you are the first mayor since I've been in Baltimore since 1999 that you looked at the intersection of students not coming to school, chronic absenteeism, and taking it upon yourself and part of your platform that we're going to get students back in school engaged. And made it a priority. Like, what was your thoughts behind that? Because I see chronic absenteeism not as a truancy issue; it's a public health issue. If they're not in school, then they're not in school, right? Like, what else are they doing? Like, what was your thinking behind that?
It's very simple. We know that if our young people aren't reading and math proficient by third grade, that every bad thing in the world is twice as likely to happen to them. And they can't grow into the best version of themselves if they're not in school, right? Nothing else matters. I can continue, and we will continue to open and renovate new schools, all of those things. But if we can give them all the money, improve the curriculum, all the things that we're working on, we'll continue to do. But it doesn't matter if those children aren't in those seats, period. So this is why I laid in and we came up with the mayor's attendance challenge to try to push and work in any way. Like even, it's not uncommon for me to go out with teachers and other folks and like go into families and say like, hey, y'all know, you need to come back to school because we cannot allow another generation of young people, young black people and brown people in the city to just fall so far behind that they'll never be able to catch up. They'll never be able to reach their potential. They'll be stuck in meaningless jobs and careers forever. And the reason why is because they didn't get the education that they could have gotten. We got to do everything that we can to get them in school because it matters. It's life or death for them.
So, it's interesting what we learned. So this year alone, we've done for Baltimore City Schools about 17,000 home visits, knocking on doors. And just listening, we just have to listen. And students and families will tell us. One of the things that I admired even during the pandemic was Baltimore City. We're in 10 states, but Baltimore City Schools was the first school district, a large district that I know that school shuts down March 11th. We're knocking on doors May 13th because the students that were most vulnerable before the pandemic were even more vulnerable now. So with 4 days, 5 days before the primary, what's some salient points that you would say to everybody?
Very, very simply, they sent me, the residents of Baltimore sent me to City Hall 4 years ago to guide us through the pandemic. We did that to start to see a reduction in violence in Baltimore. We've done that in a historic way to break us away from the years of scandal, turmoil, corruption, and public embarrassment from the elected officials. I've led that in a way that can make every resident in Baltimore proud amidst some of the greatest pressure that any mayor has faced in the city with the tragedies that we had.
Absolutely.
We're starting to see that investment. We know that our young people are our greatest resource, and we're investing them in historic ways. 5 new rec centers in 4 years, 12 new schools. Our economy is growing. Our unemployment is down. And Baltimore is now starting to scratch the surface of what our true potential is. All I'm asking for is another 4 years to finish that work so that I can do what wasn't done for me, hand it off to someone else in a much stronger position so that the person and that young person who's out there now today following behind me will take Baltimore to its highest heights. This is the time for Baltimore to do what cities around the country have done, have that consistency in leadership that has proven results that they can be proud of to allow us to grow into a better version of ourselves.
Mayor Scott, yeah, absolutely. It's an honor, it's a privilege. I know it's a sprint for 5 days. You took to, but you know what I mean? You can do some speed work. You're a half mile. We're built differently.
Quarters in me.
Yeah, we're built differently. Thank you for, taking the time, coming by, returning the text messages, being responsive, but more importantly, your sacrifice. I'm an old head now, about to be 49.
They call me Unc now too.
You get that, right? Like Unc, yes.
They regret it on the football
field.
field.
Unc G, right? But it's a lot, and I can't even imagine the pressure that you face. But you handle it well. You handle it with grace, and I pray that God continues to bless you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you, brother.
Good luck on Tuesday, good brother.
Thank you.
All right. That's a wrap for another episode of our podcast, One Door at a Time, Concentric Educational Solutions podcast, where we bring the intersection of politics, education, the community together. A salient point to everybody that watches: if you truly believe, if you are resilient, if you're unapologetic, if you're willing to sacrifice, not just give, and if you believe it, the universe will work in concert with you to achieve it. I never thought it would happen like this. Again, you can always go to our website. You can go catch us on concentric.world. Tune in, share, and I challenge everybody. Don't talk about change. Get out and vote. Get out and vote. If you think your voice won't be heard, that's not the case. Get out and vote. Mobilize. And let's do what we need to do for the city of Baltimore. See you next time. Thank you so much.